and welcome to Serenity in Leadership's series on leading responsibly with integrity and purpose. A series dedicated to conversations with people who are shining examples of this kind of leadership. I'm Thom Dennis, the CEO of Serenity in Leadership, and today I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Sridevi Kalidindi CBE. She's a consultant psychiatrist, chair of the Association of Mental Health Providers, and previously worked as the Associate Medical Director at the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. She's the National Clinical Lead for Mental Health Rehabilitation for Getting It Right First Time, an NHS England and Improvement Programme. And she was awarded the CBE in 2019 for services to rehabilitation psychiatry. Sri is a leadership, executive and life coach. She's an entrepreneur and founder of Klip Global. Klip, that's Key Life Indicator Plan. And so I'm fascinated to hear where we go with this, Sri. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Thom, and thank you for inviting me. Great to speak with you as ever.
So, Sri, I'm curious, and I think perhaps our viewers and listeners might be as well. What made you become a psychiatrist?
So that's a really good question. So I didn't plan to become a psychiatrist when I started off in medicine. I always thought I wanted to be a doctor. And once I'd come into medicine, I actually started off as a medical trainee. And pretty early on, I realised that as I was busily going to see patients on the wards as a junior doctor and doing the things I needed to do, writing in the notes. In those days, we used to write in the notes, not type in the notes. And then I'd sort of try to dash off and see my next patient. And of course, the patient wanted to talk, the families wanted to talk, to speak, to ask questions and know more about what's happening. And I could find myself getting anxious because I was thinking, gosh, I've got to get through all this work and get home. And those were the days where even a regular day, you'd easily be going home 7, 8, 9 sometimes when the wards were busy. And I came to the realization this is really not what I came into medicine for. I want to really build that rapport with people, have a therapeutic relationship, and get to know them in a more holistic way so I can support them. So I thought, okay, what else is there out there that I could try? I went into psychiatry, not really fully understanding, I think, but hoping that it might be a specialty for me. And luckily it was. I absolutely have loved it, that sort of being able to really get to know somebody well and support them back to good health, or as well as we can get them, and living lives that they want to live as much as possible. We get to work with a fantastic multidisciplinary team, and we all work together to support individuals and their families really to get to a much better place. So I'm really fortunate, and I get to really build that trust. And it is that trusting relationship, and particularly in psychiatry, yes, we have medication and we have therapy and so on, but so much of what we do is through that therapeutic relationship in psychiatry, and so it's a real privilege to be able to do that.
Yes, I'm a great admirer of people who contribute so much in an organization that is so fraught in so many ways. And perhaps we'll touch on that, I don't know. But you're the founder and CEO of Klip Global, which is a workforce wellbeing and development service where you provide employees with personalized, holistic, science-backed plans so they can lead healthier, fulfilled lives. It sounds incredible, but how do you go about fulfilling that brief?
So really what we try and do in Klip is think about it in 3 ways. So really, wherever possible, we want to work preventatively and really skill people up and support them to avoid becoming unwell in different ways. And then we also work in a very restorative way, picking up issues early and then getting people back on track with the services that we provide, or if people are very severe or very acute in their condition, in crisis, then we would also refer them on. And then we also have the transformative element, which is where the coaching comes in and getting people to their next levels. And the way that we do that, the workforce wellbeing and development, is through an app. And we also have a live service, so people can, through the app, go through all of the assessments, the goal setting, all the different elements that are on there, and also be able to directly go and book into our live sessions as well. So we've had some really fantastic successes with that, and we want to support more people.
And so, are you? I guess you're playing with. No, perhaps that's the wrong word, but using AI now and developing that. If you're using an app, how do you see that developing with AI?
I think I can't even see into the future enough to say exactly how it would develop. But certainly for now, the AI, when we have enough data, we can give people clearer support around, okay, what is it given your profile that's going to help you most at this point in time, and show people that sort of content, guide them to those relevant live sessions, and use it in that way. And in the future, I think there are many other things that we can do as well about, really supporting behaviour change using AI, thinking about how we, perhaps even have, using AR, using VR in this space as well, backed up by AI. So there's many things I think we can do that, and many of them we don't even know really yet.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating bit about it, because I think it's a Jekyll and Hyde phenomenon. So I think people who are using it in the best possible way, that's fantastic. So I think it's something like 1 in 4 people in the UK live with mental health problems, and almost 88% of people struggling with mental illness don't seek help for their problems. Do you think that mental health is the new pandemic?
I think mental health has always been underestimated in terms of how many people require support. And there's been, well, there still is, stigma and discrimination. And so even when people can feel that there's something not quite right, they don't come forward. They don't come forward in a timely way. And of course, what happens is people can get worse then as a result of that. And then they come when they're much further down the line, and it's actually harder to support them with treatment and so on to get back to their previous levels of functioning and so on. So I think it's always been there. I think that it has definitely got worse through COVID, and I think what's changed is that people recognise the issue of mental health much more, and they're more willing to come forward and speak about it and seek help, which is all good. Of course, then we have to have the services there in order to provide that care and treatment that they need. And I think that our NHS services are a little bit overwhelmed at the moment with the level of need, and obviously it's a mismatch with the level of resourcing. But of course, that's where things like Klip come in, and where employers can help and support their employees so that they can, one, avoid becoming unwell, but also that some, with those kind of more mild to moderate situations or cases, they can also get back on track through other services like ours. So it's really great, I think, that people are recognising, and particularly, employers are stepping into that breach, and they understand the bottom line of when their employees are off sick, how that impacts their business. It's the right thing to do, obviously, to support employee wellbeing and development, but also it absolutely has a positive impact on businesses' bottom lines and the culture that they create too. And that then leads to them being able to both recruit and retain that really top talent.
So do you think really that there's an increasing number of leaders who are beginning to genuinely care more about their employees and see why that is so important to the business for the preventing people from being off sick for things that you can't necessarily see. They don't manifest in the same way as someone breaking a leg and that. Do you think that the leaders really are caring more now?
I think it's variable, but I'd like to think so, Tom, that leaders really do understand that need for that holistic care, which includes mental well-being as well as physical well-being, and some of the other factors that we talked about in terms of the key life indicator plan that we cover. It's relationships, it's community, it's career, meaning, finance, as well as the mental and physical health. So it's recognizing that all of those elements do contribute to people's well-being.
Can you say a little bit more about the key life indicators, what they are, and how we're sort of monitoring and keeping a closer look on them?
So the key life indicators, we have 7 in total, and they're very holistic when put together. So we have mental health, physical health, we have relationships and communities, and also career, meaning, and finance. And so what happens, people go on, they assess how they're doing in all of these areas, and then there's an opportunity to do something positive about that and take the relevant action and get the right kind of support that's evidence-based to improve in any one of those areas.
I'm thinking of this, this interview is sort of in the context of what we call leading responsibly with integrity and purpose. And you say, you'd like to think that there are more leaders taking the right action. What do you think we need to do to persuade those that perhaps don't really see the need for this, in spite of the fact that the stats as far as the bottom line are concerned are pretty persuasive, but it seems there's a lot of leaders who still don't want to really engage with that. So how could we persuade them to be more involved and take a greater level of responsibility?
Well, I think there are several ways, and I don't think there's one way that's going to cover it all. So one is data. When we measure certain factors, so when we look at the well-being of staff and different rates of sickness and so on, and what they were off sick with, and when we look at their kind of development and progress as well through the organisation, we can see how staff are being developed, and we can also see and compare and benchmark across organisations how many people are off sick with different conditions and so on. And that data can be very powerful. And in fact, it sort of ties into some of my national work. So that's what I do at a national level for mental health rehabilitation. And people want to do well. They want to bring up their numbers and be performing well. And the beauty of something like that, like looking at the data and benchmarking, is that people can learn from one another. What's working well in one organisation? How can others learn to improve, the well-being of their staff using some of those same kind of methods and techniques? So I think that's definitely one way. And of course, people don't want to be at the bottom, do they? So they will then think about, okay, how can we fix some of this? The other element is that the more, so I'm a big believer in coaching, Tom, as I know that you are as well. And when we coach senior leaders, and they can do that inner work, and they can see, the impact that they are having and they want to have in their organisation and more widely, then I think those leaders do become more aware of their kind of social responsibility and that compassion towards their staff and the kind of wider society. So I think that's another way that we can support people to get on board. And the other way, of course, is setting kind of national policy and national targets and national guidelines. And certainly there are some countries around the globe that are doing exactly that. And I think it is that element where you bring all of these together so that you can affect that change over time. And of course, lastly, people will vote with their feet. And I know that the generations coming up now, they very much look at what the wellbeing offer is and the development offer is from their employers. And they will choose that sometimes, and the evidence shows, over a higher pay package.
Yeah.
So when we know that, then organisations who don't heed that and don't act will be the organisations that miss out and they'll get left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Do CEOs find it a bit scary to sort of enter with an organization which is sort of led by a psychiatrist?
I've not found that, and obviously I have a team around me as well, so we have lots of different skill sets and so on all covered off and capabilities. So I have not found that. I've in fact found that people are very welcoming of it, because what we find a lot in this area, Tom, is that because it's really unregulated at the moment, sort of well-being space. So having somebody who has that background, as a professional who's expert in this area, who also has that very sort of key ethical standpoint, and comes from a field that is heavily regulated, and brings that expertise and standing into the product and the service, I think is really reassuring for lots of people.
Right. And you may have seen it, but I had an exchange interview with Anita Novak a little while ago, and I call her the empathy queen. She's she has a weekly podcast about empathy, and so we talk quite a lot about empathy now. And how important do you think being empathetic is now for people? Well, it's people in positions of responsibility.
Being empathic is hugely important. I think what we are geared up to notice difference and to fear it, and that comes from our kind of ancient, thousands of years old mechanisms to keep us safe.
Yeah.
If we saw people coming from another tribe or community, we didn't know if they were safe or they were going to come and try and steal our reserves or whatever. And so that is the first thing, that when we see difference, or when we see perhaps somebody who's not operating in the same way as we are, or same level we are, so that we identify that. And I think that we do get alerted through our kind of primitive brain, our amygdala and so on. So actually, to be empathic and to be compassionate and kind, it means that people have to go to a higher level of functioning.
Yeah.
They have to overcome that fear and that sort of primal network, neural network. And so empathy is definitely something that people who are more developed generally have more of, I would say.
Yes.
And in terms of the importance of empathy in the world today, we can see very clearly what happens when we don't have empathy, that we don't value people, we don't value, the other living things around us, and all the damage that does.
Yes.
And the flip side, when people are empathic, just how empowering that can be for the people around them, and that care, not just to people, but the wider planet as well, is incredibly impactful.
Yeah. I think it's been fascinating looking at some of the decisions that are being made as a result of AI. Because, for instance, BT have announced laying off 55,000 people between now and the 2030, and they say 10,000 of them are going to be customer facing. And one of the stats they've come up with, actually, I think it was Octopus Energy that came up with the stat, saying that about 85% of people find AI more empathic than the human beings on the end of a phone. And I think that's a real sort of wake-up call for us, because we're so busy that actually I think it's one of the first things it's quite easy to lose, is that willingness to be present with someone and actually be empathic. Have you sort of come across that at all? I don't know.
Yes, I had come across that, and then I read more about it, and it was a very specific sample that is, you can't really generalize that across other samples. So I would really take that with a pinch of salt, or with caution. Yeah,
That's great. You were the data.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to say more on that?
No, I don't think that's it for that piece. Yeah.
So we've talked about empathy and that sense of belonging, when you're in your own tribe. I really feel that people more than ever want to feel part of something, to feel like they belong to a community, including at work. So do you see that in your work too? And is hybrid working detrimental to that?
Connection, human connection is so key. And when you look at all the studies that show when people are happier and live longer, that close confidence, friendships, the social connections are right at the heart of those improvements for people, and the people who are happiest and who live longest. So in terms of when we think about hybrid working, I think that it can be really a good thing. And if it's thought about, it doesn't have to be detrimental to that feeling of community. In fact, it can help, because if people are more able to be working at home for some of the time, so taking out their commuting time, that can be repurposed. Perhaps they're less tired, less stressed. They're more able to get on with things during the day that they need to do, that are more household type things as well. All of these things, I think, can help to live a more balanced life. And that includes having more time to connect with others. Maybe there's more connection locally. But also, even at work, there are ways to make sure that people stay connected. People teams going in on the same day for every week, for example, so they do have that face-to-face time as well. People being able to book in times where they just have a coffee together or work together online. Certainly I've done that, and I find that really useful. So you'll still feel like you're working with your team, although you're all sitting quietly working on your own stuff, but you can have those conversations in between. So it doesn't have to be. I think if you're working solely at home, though, that might have some detrimental impact. And it really is about, again, being considerate of how am I going to make sure that connection and that sort of feeling of having people around and that community, how am I going to get that if I'm not in work?
Yeah. I noticed that there are some leaders, some in organizations, who really want to get everybody back in the office. Whereas for the people lower down the food chain, so to speak, they all want to be able to have the hybrid working for all the advantages that you've described.
Mm.
What do you think it is that's making people resist the hybrid working as a model?
I think there are some leaders who worry that their teams are not as productive, and there may be some truth in that. Others feel that their teams are productive and perhaps more productive at times. So I think it's important for people to have the data to make these decisions from, rather than just the feeling of what they want to happen. There's been lots and lots written about this, and some of the data coming out that it's harder on, women who may have more of the other responsibilities to be coming in every day. And a lot of women have been voting with their feet and leaving the workplace as a result of where they have been asked to go back into the workplace. So it's easy for the people who are able to, who did well going into the office every day. That's what they want to get back to.
I love that you come back to the data, because that's the bit that you can't really argue with. It sort of overrides people's beliefs and about things.
Also, it's important to learn from individual narratives as well, because that's when you can really see how things impact positively or negatively, both in terms of the individual and for the organisation. And so the learning has to be hand in hand, both the data and the sort of the I guess the qualitative data as well, and that experiential data.
Yeah. So do you ever help organizations with that? I guess a lot, well, for most organizations, they're monitoring, they're measuring, they've got goals and so on. So I guess this is another area that it's worth monitoring and storing data, and that's probably data they haven't monitored before. Is that your experience?
Yeah, they've not had to monitor it before.
Yeah. I remember working with a bank before, quite a long time before the pandemic, and they were reducing their office space to reduce overheads, and there was a lot of panic going on in managers, just saying, well, if people work from home, they're not going to do any work. They're going to be out, they're going to the dentist, taking the dog for a walk, looking after the children. We're not going to get any work done at all. And I did reflect that it seemed to me that an awful lot of that was actually, if I'm a manager and I've got some people around me, I can monitor them and control them and so on. But if they're not here, then what is my function? And I think for some people, actually tying their identity up with their job, there was a real threat of losing a sense of their identity. Who am I if I don't manage and control people?
Yes. It speaks to different types of leadership.
It does.
It speaks to the older version of leadership, as I see it, which is much more that pace-setting leader, the hero leader, as opposed to more the servant leader that is developing their staff and enabling their staff and coaching their staff. So, of course, if you have the those first styles, then you need to have people in the office more in order to serve those functions, really, in terms of checking, telling, monitoring. Whereas if you've got more of a coaching, empowering, servant type leadership, then of course you're really enabling people to do good work, wherever they are. You don't have to be there constantly sort of checking on what's actually happening.
So do you see that style of leadership emerging more today?
Not as much as it needs to.
How can we encourage that, bring it out more?
I think there's leading by example. There is coaching in our work to support leaders to move to that more kind of modern style of leadership, I would say, or more fit for purpose currently in our current environment. I think that where we have leadership programs in all sorts of settings, that there is an understanding of the need for that shift as well.
Yeah.
And certainly in NHS, where we've had pace setting leaders, and what can happen is that people are so focused on reaching the targets because of being pushed to reach those, that quality of care and even safety sometimes can suffer. And we've seen that time and again in the NHS.
Yes. Well, we've heard quite a lot about that in the news, haven't we?
It's very tragic.
Yeah. I think the way that we train people in technical specializations, it's quite easy to lose sight of the human aspects. It's extraordinary, really, even when we're relating to people. You talk about, you hear some doctors and their bedside manners, and it's I can understand it at a level, when doctors are so incredibly busy, and they're just, so many of them want to be able to have a better connection with their patient, and yet time dictates that they've got to move on to the next one, and there's this person who's in the hospital for the first time, and it's all strange and it's incredibly frightening, and you've got someone who's so used to that environment. There's such a dissonance there. It must, it's so difficult, and if only we can have more time. I think we've got to create the more time, and also, actually, I think perhaps the skill of presence, being, even if you're with someone momentarily, just being entirely with them in those moments can make such a difference. And we get back to that sense of empathy, that connection. I mean, do you agree? I
do agree. I do agree, Tom, and it doesn't take anything to be kind. Well, it does, because you have to replenish. So as a doctor, we have to replenish ourselves in order to be able to keep giving and to keep being kind and compassionate. And that's also why I'm doing the work that I'm doing with Klip, is supporting people in the NHS and social care, and also in charities, who often keep giving and giving and giving until they burn out, or they develop other conditions and so on. So very much about, the phrase I use is pouring from an overflowing cup as much as we possibly can. Maybe we can't do it all the time, but to keep on, making sure that our own resources are topped up, so that we can pour from that overflow of additional compassion, kindness, resource, energy, rather than keeping on pouring and getting to the very bottom and then collapsing, because that doesn't really do the individual any favors, or if you think about it, it's just not sustainable, and they can't do all those other things for all those other people that they actually really want to do.
Yeah. So Sri, sort of getting to the end of this, running out of time. So just to round things up, can you give us, say, 3 tips on how leaders can improve how they help employees with their mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of how leaders can improve and help their employees with their mental health, I think number one is be the change. Lead by example. Show people as a leader how you look after your own mental health and how you take those breaks, how you spend time outside of work, with loved ones, on things that you enjoy outside of work, and getting enough sleep, eating well, all those things that we know are linked to good mental health. Be that change, be that example that others can follow. And we all know that far too often leaders do the opposite because they're too busy, because they've got so much on. In fact, by putting into place some of those systems to care for themselves and keep themselves mentally well, their productivity, their ability to sustainably do good work really, really increases.
Yeah.
The second is to ensure that they provide a good, comprehensive mental health well-being and development offer. And it needs to be a range because there's not a one-size-fits-all. People are different. They engage differently with well-being offers. So make sure that there's enough of a range that meets the different needs of your staff. That's really important. So listen, make sure you're measuring what's going on with your wellbeing service, and iterate and improve and tweak so it really does meet the needs of your staff. And the third would be to train up line managers, because we know that line managers have a huge impact on the mental health of their staff. And so when we train up line managers to understand mental health, to understand how to keep people mentally healthy and not actually, make them worse to the point where they're off stressed and off sick, that is a really key area that we can intervene and do something positively about. The evidence is there for that.
Yes.
The last thing to say, actually, it sort of touches on some of the things we were talking about earlier, Thom, is that we often talk about soft skills, don't we? Of the empathy, the other kind of communication skills, conflict management, all those things. I mean, I call those power skills.
Yes.
Because it's people who have those skills that are the ones that can lead organisations well and can have the biggest impact. So and the people who have power skills are the ones that can work best in teams and provide the results that they want to and that their organisations want them to provide. And in something like the NHS, it's crucial. Those power skills, when they are there, patient care improves, staff morale improves, all of those things. And when those skills are not there, things can go really badly wrong.
Well, hallelujah. And thank you for finding another term for soft skills. I think in so many organizations, soft skills is dismissed as the thing that you can get rid of, and it's the training that you can dispose of the most easily. And I'm completely with you that I often say organizations thrive when people thrive, and people thrive when they feel psychologically safe, and that environment comes from all those power skills. That's what creates that. So thank you. Let's hope that everybody adopts that and does away with this soft skills and talks about power skills. It's great.
Well, we can use it, can't we, Thom?
Absolutely.
Be the change.
Be the change. That's what Gandhi said, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
Sri, thank you so very much. This has been fascinating, and I really hope actually educational for a lot of the people who watch this. We ignore mental health at our peril. It is so important, and thank you for all the work that you are doing, which is just making a difference in so many different ways. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Thom. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been an absolute delight as ever to speak to you and speaking about things that are really close to my heart. So I hope it's useful for people. And thanks again, and take care, and hope to see you very soon.
Yes, thanks.
Bye-bye.